So when I was first asked to introduce Marc, I have to admit I kind of cringed a little bit because it means I have to tell you the truth. Yeah, the truth. He's Darth Vader. No, that's not true. But the truth is, in the last 10 years that I've studied with Marc, I've realized that life doesn't get easier studying with Marc, but it does get more pleasurable, right? It gets a lot more pleasurable. It's not like he gives you, easy life hacks to make $1 million or, just sort of simple, quick fixes. Although those things do happen, right? Some of us have experienced some, increasing, success, perhaps. But that's not why we study with him, right? We study because when we study with Marc, we actually feel more alive. We feel the intrinsic meaning of life come alive for us. So I'll just give you a few examples in my own experience. Back in 2018, when I first studied the Holy of Holies with Marc, I was in a rough place. I was dealing with anxiety, depression. I didn't have a job. I had chronic pain for 6 years. I thought I couldn't function in this world. I had racked up $20,000 of debt, credit card debt, and I eventually did find a job, but I hated the job. It was a sales job at a for-profit company, and I had never worked in a for-profit company before. And I was thinking, I actually was pleading with God, don't make me take this job. But I had to take the job because without it, I had to survive, right? And so I took this job as a salesperson at a company called SwageLock. But I really wanted to be a coach. I really wanted to help support people grow and transform. But I was at the lowest of the low, I think, probably one of the lowest parts of my life. And I thought, well, when, if not now studying with Marc, when would it be? So I started studying with Marc in Holy of Holies. And I would mostly show up and just cry for the first few sessions. And what would he do? He would say, "Put your head on my shoulder. It's okay." Sometimes he actually chanted chants of adoration, and he made me feel loved. He made me experience the love of God. He modeled the love of God that I could actually feel in my body. And at other times he said, basically, just choose joy, choose love. Right? Life is hard. And so what I decided to do in that job that I hated was, instead of just wallow in my despair, I actually started a practice every day of writing down 3 things that I saw around me that indicated that evolution was happening, that Eros was present. So every day I would write things down. Maybe a colleague comes to me and says good morning in a delightful smile, or a crisis of the management actually made a new policy be enacted. Oh, evolution, something's changing. Or maybe someone comes to me and asks for help on a project. 2 separate parts coming together to form a larger whole. Oh, evolution, Eros, right? The experience of aliveness. So I would write that down every day, right? And over the course of my time there at the company, I would never have predicted this, but there was a person that decided to retire who was in charge of the leadership program at the company. And because they knew I had studied leadership development, they came and asked me to replace him. So I thought, wow, wait a minute, what? That doesn't make sense. How does that, exactly what I've wanted to do, but I thought it would actually not be possible. So I actually became the person in charge of today, a leadership development program for 48 of my colleagues at the company. So my job is to help people grow. And I bring in the Dharma all the time, right? So now my job's not easier, but it's certainly more pleasurable. And if anyone knows if anyone was here in 2020 or some of the other festivals when pleasure was the topic, we know what level 5 pleasure, unique self-expression, the creativity of giving your gifts, that was pleasurable. Example 2. speaking of the pleasure map, and some of you may be still waiting for the pleasure map book. It'll come out eventually, but here's what happened. About 4 years ago, Marc asked Christina, Amelong, Suzette, and me to edit his book on the pleasure map. And so it was a little a triad of outrageous lovers, and we went and edited the transcript and made it all beautiful, and actually, we were just so proud of ourselves. We were like, wow, we did it. So we were about to submit it, and then 2020 comes, and a festival topic at that time was pleasure. And so Marc comes out afterwards and says, hey, would you go through that whole transcript in the festival and add everything, all the new dharma to the pleasure map? Oh, God. So we had to go through that and, read 30 pages of everyday transcripts and try to figure out the best dharma. Oh, yeah, and by the way, go find that one teaching on the strawberries that I said in 2016. It was in a message it was a little memo on a piece of paper to Shahat or something so out there. We had to go find this little story and add it to the pleasure map. So it's not easy working with Marc, right? There was a time when I was ready to quit at some point, and I lashed out at him, actually. God, a lot of anger. But through that whole process, now we're actually about to finish it, so you'll be getting it, those of you who want to get the book. It'll be coming out soon. And through that process, I've actually learned all about pleasure and all the levels of pleasure. And I got so much closer to Suzette and to Christina. And actually, and I kind of rewind the tape a little bit, when I first started with the pleasure map, I was so inspired by the content, by the Dharma, the teachings, that I actually was about to quit my job, and I bought a ticket to France, and I was going to go work as a caretaker for someone with autism. And I thought, well, as long as I have the pleasure map to guide my life, I could actually go anywhere. I could experience pleasure. There's pleasure everywhere. And that's what I learned a lot from Marc, is pleasure is everywhere as long as we look for it and train our perception. So I didn't actually go to France, but it would have been fun to be closer to Claire. But anyways, that didn't happen. And the third example, the example of, it's almost hard, there's not words for this that really approximate this, but the way Marc has held my relationship with Christina, to Heli. It's been a very complex journey, and it's not all sweetness and light, as Marc says. It's Marc, what he does so beautifully, and if anyone needs relationship support, I would encourage you to find Suzette to find a time in Marc's calendar. Because how does Marc do it? He doesn't give us quick fixes and kind of therapeutic techniques that are kind of working one day and they don't work the other. He actually lets us tell our stories, and when we told our stories, he fully received them, and he wove the stories together. He weaves stories together. He truly is a tailor of Eros, which is the theme, by the way, of this festival. We haven't really mentioned that. There it is. He's a tailor of Eros, Marc. So he receives us fully, and without some sort of judgment, moralistic judgments, he just receives us fully, and feels us fully, and weaves together the story, so that we can build a vision for the future and actually develop the experience of the intimacy equation. So in all of these examples, it's what I'd like to make sure everyone takes away from this introduction is that, as I said, it's not easy to work with Marc all the time, but life gets more pleasurable. And the more I've worked with him, the more I've realized that life is full of pleasure and pain. Life is paradox. And the more I think that just the next big thing, and then my life's going to get easier and better, and all the things are going to get solved, what actually ends up happening is I'm able to hold more. And I'm able to hold the perfection and the imperfection. I'm able to hold the paradox of being and becoming, the paradox of kind of the absolute and the relative, the paradox of we need to, be successful, but it's not about success at all, right? And there's also a sense that throughout this whole process, I've been developing my own sense of autonomy and agency so that I can actually just hold more of this holy and broken hallelujah, as we often say, and ultimately develop more of a capacity for pleasure and to perceive love, because as he always says, love is a perception. So that's the story I wanted to share, and it's just such a pleasure to introduce Marc, even though it's not always easy, because he may not even be here. Is he here? There he is. Give it up for Dr. Marc Gafni.
Yay, thank you.